What is up, and welcome back to another episode of So There's That. I am your hostess, doing the mostest, Kivanshi. And listen, those of you watching, do you see my outfit? When I saw Gabi pull up on the scene with the all-white pinstripe with the black, I said, I have an outfit that looks like this. So obviously, I'm gonna do the most. I'm gonna be dramatic. I'm gonna be me. And I'm coming on the screen, okay, looking sleek. We got the slick back bun, okay? We got the outfit looking nice. I was super excited. I'm always excited to see like what clothes she's gonna wear and if I could pull it off like in my closet, like with some stuff like that. So this is the second outfit that she's worn this season where I'm like, I have this. So shout out to the costume designer, okay? You have taste, all right? But welcome back. We are on episode 9 of Found. It's season 2, episode 9, Missing While Targeted, and we have returned from our winter hiatus. Now, it's crazy because 8 episodes before a winter hiatus is like, what? And then there's 22 episodes this season. And at the end of this episode, I literally was texting my friend Margot. I was like, what are they gonna do to us next? Because they literally came out of the gate swinging, okay? The episode should have been called Who Got Shot? Oh, what's that song? Who shot you? It should have been Missing While Who Got Shot. Like, missing while dodging bullets. Like, something. Because obviously this was the theme of the episode. So before we jump into it, I'm gonna go ahead and do my usual, in case y'all forgot, who's in it. So again, Found, genre, crime drama. The creator is Nkechi Okoro Carroll. It stars Shanola Hampton as Gabi, Gabrielle Walsh as Lacey, Arlen Escarpeta as Zeke, Kelli Williams as Margaret, Karan Oberoi as Dhan, and Brett Dalton as Trent, and Mark Paul Gosselaar as Sir. For this particular episode, let me go into IMDb because I did not do that, so we can figure out who wrote and directed this episode. It was definitely really well written, and I also tweeted, I was like, when they wrote this, I wonder if they asked how many times can they get away with calling Trent heavy boots. Like, out the gate, I was like, I should keep a counter, like a tracker on this, because he was going in heavy. And I also wonder if Mark Paul just likes calling him that. So it really made me wonder if it was like the writer who loves it or just some inside joke where Mark just likes to say it all the time, because we had a lot of them. So going into episode 9, this episode is particularly about when a recovering drug addict goes missing, the girlfriend turns to M&A, but interference from outside forces complicates the investigation. Sir uncovers a shocking secret about one of M&A's allies, and one of the team members is critically injured. Who wrote this episode? We have a few people on the credit: Nkechi Okoro Carroll and David Fage. And the director of this, I cannot pronounce his last name. I am so sorry. Her name is Charissa. There are a lot of letters in her last name. Let me see if Google Translate can help me, because I don't want to butcher it. Let's detect the language. Let's see if it'll put it in here. How do you say this?
Carissa Sanjarernsuithikul.
Carissa Sanjarernsuithikul. That's what Google Translate said. So that's what we're gonna go with. So I already gave you the premise of what this episode is supposed to be about, and as y'all already know, I stopped, especially with the show, I really just stopped like going like a play-by-play, because there's certain things that are just really important, and for some of my other ones I didn't even take notes, but it's been a while, it's been a few weeks, and I needed to take some notes so we can go ahead and follow along. All right, so the biggest previously that you really need to know about is that Zeke hacked into the police station and ended up seeing the letter that Trent intercepted from Gabi. So he had been taking and checking her mail just to try to keep tabs on her as well as Sir. And by the end of episode 8, she ended up knowing where he was, and she showed up with her brass knuckles ready for a fight. The current days. So we open it up and we see Zeke, Dhan, Ethan, and Gabi, and they're having like a little karaoke night or whatever. When Ethan messy ass I forget how they got on the subject, but something about like asking Lacey, like, did she still not reply to the school for to going back to being a lawyer? And so Lacey's like, okay, since you want to start a topic of avoiding things and everybody's business is put on blast. One of the big ones in the room is what's going on with Dhan and Ethan's relationship. And at the end of this, we see, or they tell us that Ethan has moved out and signed a lease or whatever. And right when that happens, they all get an alert. There's somebody at the at M&A. I'm trying not to cough and it's messing with my thoughts. So there's somebody at M&A, and so Dhan looks at Ethan, you know, they all look at Ethan like, you know, sorry, blah, 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 blah. And of course, as always, M&A calls, like, let's park it here. Let's park it here. Okay. Ethan, you've been on my nerves all season. All season. For you to be this psychiatrist and supposed to be able to figure things out, this passive aggressiveness and then misdirecting your own angers and frustration with your husband at somebody else is a problem for me. And it's a problem for me because of your profession. It's not to say that psychiatrists, psychologists, or whatever can't go through the same things that we go through. We're all human. They have their own psychologists and stuff too. But to be this out of touch in recognizing the stuff that you're doing is a problem for me. It's a problem. It's giving you lack self-awareness. And then if you don't lack self-awareness and you're doing it on purpose, that makes it worse. So I'm just not here for it. All right. So there's a woman at M&A, her name is Eileen, and she's coming in because her husband Ian is missing. And he is a recovering drug addict, and so is she. But she's just like, look, we've been doing well, we've been clean, this is so unlike him, and I've already did the things that I was supposed to do, and I wanted to come here and find Gabi. And Lacey tells her, you know, I'm not Gabi, but we will do everything that we need to do to find Ian. So Dhan's like, you know, it's weird, like, where is Gabi? And Lacey's just kind of like, first off, it's super freaking early in the morning, and then last night she said she had to take care of some personal things, but it's all good. I'm gonna divvy out some stuff, you gonna do this, Zeke is gonna do this, and I'm gonna do these things. So we know that Gabi wants Lacey to take over, and so throughout this entire episode, you really see Lacey step into her own. It wasn't even taking over Gabi's shoes, it was Lacey like finding her voice again throughout the entirety of this episode. So then Trent is walking around his house, y'all, with his shirt off. Honestly, like, okay, cool, whatever, great body, we don't care, okay? So he's in the kitchen, and he's getting some coffee, and he's reading this letter again, and he's just kind of going over it, but then he sets it down. He goes back to the bedroom, and there is a woman in his bed. When I tell y'all I gave the loudest eye roll that exists, like, it broke sound barriers, how loud and how hard I rolled my eyes. So we find out this girl name is Heather, and she's a criminal defense attorney. While she's trying to like ask these questions to try to sneak and get some information, you know, he's just being cagey and he's dodging and everything, and she's like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to work. Whoever she is, she must have really broke your heart. And he just kind of like get stumped by it or whatever, and all she's basically indicating is he's not ready to really move on. So she's like, okay, cool, it is what it is. If it's just gonna be some booty calls, like, cool, that's great. See you next time when I'm ready to get it in. Back at the gym, right? So Sir was like, Heavy Boots is really dumb. Of course he wasn't gonna get here and you ended up coming, but honestly, Gabs, I'm not actually here for you. And then Gabrielle looks at some of the pictures and she recognizes one of the kids. And Sir is just like, listen, all these kids got something to do with heavy boots. And it ain't really got nothing to do with you. You think I'm over here trying to sabotage y'all and this and the third? Gabs, I want you to be my companion, okay? He pulled a Lestat, okay? Be my companion, Louis. Be all the beautiful things that you are. And he was like, I'm literally trying to help them solve their problems so that you can come with me and be guilt-free. Also, I know where Margaret's son, Jamie, is. And he gets this notification on the phone. He's like, Gabi, look, I'm gonna explain everything, but I ain't never lied to you, but you need to hurry up and get the fuck up out of here. And she's just being hard-headed and not listening. And he's like, you need to listen to me. I promise I will explain everything, but now is not the time. And he screams out no, and he looks over her shoulder, and somebody comes from behind her and whacks her hard as hell in the head. During this entire time, we have Lacey calling Trent asking about Ian just to see if he got picked up anywhere, but you can hear her really frustrated on the phone because Trent is being rather difficult. But she's just trying to like solve everything, and she's with Dhan and, you know, giving orders and stuff to Zeke, and she ends up saying that she's going to take Ian's laptop over to Zeke's spot. So her workaround for this, which I thought was pretty clever, is instead of Zeke getting on the computer or even looking at it, she was just going to have him give her all the codes to break into the computer so that they can find out any more information about him. So Trent is at work, and you see on the screen that he has Ian's picture pulled up, but he's looking at the letter and stuff again when Heather texted him and was like, hey, so I think I accidentally left something at your place, wink wink. And he over here smiling and giggling and shit at this flirty message when he looks back at the letter that he intercepted and he realizes where he needs to go. He shows up late as always, and Gabi is unconscious on the floor. And then she ends up like saying like, no, don't arrest me yet. I need to spread my dad's ashes. And she's just kind of like in and out of consciousness. And so she's kind of like thrust back into her feelings about her father, which this is literally how all this got started. Why she kidnaps her in the first place. And we head into our first flashback of the episode. Now these flashbacks, while Lacey is in them and we get to learn some other things about Lacey, which I'll talk about in the end, we got to see more of them about Gabi then, which to me explains a lot about Gabi now. So in this flashback, she's on the phone with her dad and she finds out that he checked himself out of rehab. She is upset. When Bella's dad walks into the room and she hurries up and gets off the phone and she turns around, she plasters this big smile on her face and you know, hi, I think their name is Parker, something like that. Hi, Mr. Parker. Oh no. He's like, so we can pretend that I didn't overhear this, or you could talk to me, like I'm here to listen. And she just deflects everything back to Lacey. And we find out that the reason he hasn't been around too much is because when, I keep saying Lacey, Bella, they're the same person. When Bella came back after being kidnapped, she didn't want to be around men anymore. She didn't trust him. So his presence in the household wasn't helping with her healing. So he just took more jobs and stuff on the road. But he wanted to come back and give his wife a break and be around his daughter. And, you know, because she said that things were getting better. Gina was like, things are getting better. But the rate in which I think he thought it would get better is not happening. So Gabi is kind of just taking over the parental role for that. So after they talk and everything like that, he's like, okay, well, I'm here for you if you need, like, you're basically family now. And she thanks him. And when he leaves, her whole being and everything just crumbles. Like, she is just being strong for everybody else. And in all of the flashbacks and stuff that we've seen, we've never truly seen her break down, except when she went off on her dad about her mom and him not celebrating because he was too drunk and he forgot. So I think her flashbacks are very crucial to why she does what she does now in the way that she responds emotionally to all of the events around her. So Gabi is in the hospital. We're back in current times, and Trent is there. Dhan shows up because they all got the call that Gabi was in the hospital from Trent. And Dhan and Trent, like, so you went to go see her by yourself and all this other thing. She finally put them in their place. Like, please get y'all hypocritical asses off of your high horses and come on back down to earth, okay? The air is very thin up there, and I need you to come down and consume some of this oxygen so that you can realize that you are no different from me, okay? Catch me up on this Ian case, okay? You need to figure out what happened to Christian, because apparently he's in the wind, and we need to figure out who Sir's accomplice is. Like, we have stuff to do, and I don't have time for this, okay? And now we're finally seeing her not absorb all the things, and so maybe this means that she's letting go of some of the guilt, but they laid it on thick between the first 8 episodes, so I'm glad that it's done because I'm over it. So Gabi is back at M&A, and they're talking about everything. They're talking about Ian. They're talking about all of the information and stuff that they gathered. And Lacey is talking about how when she checked Ian's laptop, what she found when Trent barges in. I want to pause here because fire the receptionist. And Gabi actually was like, you're going to make me fire my receptionist. Like, what are you even doing up in here? But honestly and truly, we need a new receptionist, or at least a key card or something, or like a buzzer or something outside of the building's door, because I'm over this. So they were like, first off, Zeke didn't do nothing illegal. Secondly, like, actually we have something for you to do, so you can go back to the station and you can go look for these things. And he's like, all right, bet. So everybody again has their assignments. Things are kind of moving fairly quickly with these things because Sir is like so heavily in the mix, and Gabi has been specifically hurt around him, so it's kind of moving just like it did when Lacey was kidnapped again by him. So the parallels in which we're handling the case alongside of what's going on with Gabi and Trent and all this other stuff, it's kind of moving fast. And Lacey is just like, something is off with Trent. When I called him earlier, he was acting like he didn't want to give me no information. And now all of a sudden he's gung-ho. And Gabi's like, well, you know, it could be because I got hurt, but trust your gut and figure out like what's actually going on with him. We also get Margaret in this episode, guys. So the full team does show up in this episode. I forget, where did she go? Gabi went, I forget where she went, and I don't think I actually put it in my notes. But she was somewhere with Trent asking for an update. I think she actually did go back to the police station, but they were just in this hallway, so I couldn't really tell like the location. But she's asking him for an update, and he's just like, oh, I didn't find anything, and this, that, and the third. And she's like, okay, well, it's time for me to go do a press conference. Like, I got stuff to do because I'm not really sure what's going on with you, but it is what it is. And he's like, give me your phone. And she's like, are you shitting me right now? Like, you trying to assert some type of authority over me? You were consorting with the enemy and a known criminal and all of these other things. If you don't give it to me, like, oh, I'm taking you, I'm booking you into the station. And she's like, so you would rather arrest me on 0 grounds than us try to figure out where Ian is? Boy, okay. So Lacey finds out that Gabi has been arrested, but she also got a call that Ian might be in the morgue. So she's on her way flying out, and she tells Dhan that he needs to do the press conference. And Don's kind of freaking out a little bit because he's like, this ain't got nothing to do with me. And Lacey's like, I understand that this may be triggering for you, but you've actually pulled through and you relate and you can reach out in a way that is very specific and could actually connect with other people because you have a history of being close to people in your life like this. And you know how easily it is for people to be forgotten and cast aside because they're addicts. And she just boosts him up and gives him that confidence. And honestly, Dhan does a really really good job at the press conference while Lacey goes and do what she needs to do. And that was not the body in the morgue. And then we see Trent in there talking to Gabi. Now, this is the part where I feel like Gabi, out of all of the choices and the decisions that she made in this episode, talking to Trent after he arrested her was the dumbest decision that she made. At the end of the day, ma'am, you do not talk to a cop without a lawyer. Like, I was over here like, girl, shut up. This man is not your friend. This man is not on your side, okay, at all. And in this, she ends up mentioning that Sir ended up going to Zeke's house and they had like their own little personal standoff or whatever. And y'all remember when he actually got Zeke to walk out, and then when he alerted Zeke to being able to leave his home, Zeke ended up passing out. And then Trent's trying to be all like fake worried and shit. When Lacey walks in the room, it was just like, if your name is not lawyer, then there's nothing else to say. And he's like, well, you're just a law student. Again, if your name is not lawyer, she's leaving. Gabi, let's go. So Gabi gets up, leaves, and you know, she's like, okay, girl, I see you, Lace. I see you. I'm proud of you. And Lacey's like, don't even give me that right now. You went out with Sir on some vigilante stuff because you feel like you have to find him all on your own. And I cannot cope with losing you. I cannot do that. And so she ends up kind of having like a little panic attack almost and just saying, I can't lose you. I can't. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And this goes back to one of the flashbacks where her dad was saying, like, you know, she does everything on her own time and she's still not talking to anybody. She's just writing things and drawing pictures and stuff like that. But now you kind of get to see in these flashbacks where she's not around men and all this other stuff. It's not to say that they want to necessarily rush her through the process, but you understand that the way that she's able to conquer things and trust herself, it's just a slow moving process. And Gabi has been here for her the entire time. So to lose Gabi, honestly, I think Lacey would go back to whatever happened. I just think Lacey would have I don't want to say that she would be catatonic or mute again. I just feel like it would harm Lacey and set her back. But then on the other side, I feel like Lacey is stronger than she thinks. So I think it's a mental block and not anything as far as her being incapable of taking over M&A once Gabi actually goes to jail, if that makes sense. So like I said, Margaret shows up. She's on the big screen and she's talking to Dhan, and she's like, you did a great job today, but also you're not telling me something because why was it you during the press conference in the first place? And Trent is like trying to jump around it, but he ends up spilling the tea when he's like, oh, you can ask Gabi yourself, hey girl. And Gabi walks in and they're all excited. Zeke calls, and so the full team is together. Zeke makes a joke about, you know, that's his spot on the screen with Margaret. And they end up going through the case. And so even though Margaret's with her daughter right now, still recovering, having all of them there, especially after Lacey was kind of doing two people's jobs and Zeke was just doing what he could with what he has, it was really refreshing to see them all together and just in this moment where there was no strife and there was no fighting. And so they're pulling up stuff, and Dhan's like, Ian has been moved to so many different precincts, but none of them have like his name on the logs long enough to even track him. And Lacey's like, I also found on his computer that there was a death at the prison. And so they're like, okay, well, let's go look this up. Come to find out, Ian was at the prison during the time of the death. And so Gabi's like putting two and two together. Well, they all are, but she's vocalizing like, okay, if he witnessed the death, they're going to continue to move him until the trial. And Dhan's like, okay, well, this has been taking a year, but we already know with stuff like this, you're asking questions, you're doing your investigation, it takes a very long time. And so they're like, obviously he's in police protection. And Lacey's like, what did she say? She mentioned something about them being protected by the police and potentially being hidden, when Dhan is like, yeah, but if that's the case, wouldn't Trent know about it? And they all just had like the same look on their face. So Gabi's like, absolutely, he does. You know what? I'm gonna be right back. So she goes there, banging on his door. He opens the door. She just busts through it, which I thought was funny. Like, girl, y'all are not together. And she just rolled up in there. She was like, where is Ian? Ian, Marco Polo. And she ends up finding him. And she was like, you literally are working against us, knowing his wife, a recovering addict, is out here looking for him, and you got everybody spinning their tails when you could have just told us from jump instead of trying to play these games. And he's like, well, Ian came to me, and so I hid him. So she's like, Ian, he can't even legally keep you here. Your wife is looking for you. Everybody is worried. You can come with us and we can keep you safe until you testify. He was like, thank you, girl, but I want to do right by her. Like, we want a family. I want to be good for her. And then they find out that he's testifying tomorrow. So she's like, okay, I'll relay the message and we will all be there for you. You don't have to do this alone. So she's walking out and Trent's like, you know, I'm sorry or whatever, when as Gabi's walking towards the door, she sees the bra on the couch. And I mean, out in the open. And Trent's like, don't start. Did it look like she was about to start with you? Did it? But you just wanted her to have a reaction. And I'm not saying that you did that on purpose. You didn't know she was going to be coming over. But to preemptively say, don't start. Start what? Y'all are not together. So what do you want from her? Okay? And she was like, I'm not saying nothing. I'm literally about to go back to my friends. So they go back, they do their toast, they do the shot and everything like that, and all is well in M&A land. The next day, everybody's at the courthouse. Eileen sees Ian after he's been, you know, on the run, hiding out for a couple of weeks, and they hug and they're getting ready to walk into the courthouse when shots fire out. We're looking around. Of course, Trent is covering Ian. He immediately goes over to Gabi. There's blood all over her coat, but she hasn't been hit. Y'all, our precious Dhan has been shot. So we're at the hospital. We're rushing. Dhan is just like, that's Gabi's person. Out of everybody in like the judgment and stuff like that, like, she has Gina, she has Lacey, but for the men in Gabi's life specifically, she has been let down by men in her life over and over and over to even have someone like Dhan after getting kidnapped by the teacher that you loved, after your father chose his addiction over you. Dhan has a special place in her life. So they're all in the waiting room. Margaret hightailed it and got there too. So Ethan comes out after getting the report from the doctors with the surgery, and he comes out and he's upset. So they're all like, oh my God, like, what's going on? And he's like, there, you know, everything is like a touch and go, and you know, it's just gonna be a long recovery, and we just don't know until he comes out of it. And so Gabi's like, listen, we can do whatever you need. We can get all our blood types. We can give him blood. We can do whatever. We can bring you snacks. Like, what do you need? Honestly, Gabi, I've had to share him with you our entire relationship. And like, honestly, if this is going to be the last time that I have with him, then I want that time to be spent with him. And, you know, I don't want you here in this space. Only talking to Gabi as if the rest of the people around her don't also work at M&A. As if your husband did not choose this job. As if you did not know he worked for M&A before you married him. But somehow it's Gabi. So you're saying Gabi cannot be there for her best friend who could die because you're in your fucking feelings with your misplaced bullshit to her? Girl, I am done with you, Ethan. Girl, over it. Sign the divorce papers. I really want Dhan to find out that you did this and like, just end it. Like, end it. Because you're not going to get anything from this. Ultimatums do not end well. And that is what you're doing. Not only ultimatums with your husband, but ultimatum with his friend. And that's absolutely, like, absolutely nah. And so everybody's just kind of looking around, stunned at this. But Gabi's like, you know what? It's cool. Y'all got it. I'ma leave. Because it looked like, I think Margaret was going to go with her. And so she just turns to Lacey and Margaret, and she's like, it's fine. It's fine. So she goes back to M&A, and she's crying. She pulling out the whiskey. She's looking at pictures of Dhan and like her and Dhan, just different things. And she pouring it up. And this is one of the first times as an adult, as Gabi that we know her of today, is crying. And it reminded me of the flashback that when Bella's dad left the room, how she just kind of broke down and caved in on herself. Gabi is holding so much, and she takes so much that she doesn't even feel safe or vulnerable enough to break down in front of people that she does love. And she has to hide this pain from everyone. As she's going through these photos, she sees a picture of Dhan with like a toy truck, and she has a flashback to I was gonna say patients. That's my job. A flashback to a case with a couple and where the car came from, and they said, no, it's fine, you can keep it, we're gonna be getting a real one soon. And then Gabi's like calling Trent, and it goes to voicemail. She's like, hey, remember what Margaret said about Sir's location? The reason we are not able to track him because I think he's moving in an RV. Call me when you get this. So she's just kind of sitting there and she's waiting. So Trent is at home and he shoots Heather a text. I'm a cop, and yes, she really did break my heart, like whatever. And he's unwinding everything, putting his service weapon away, locking it up, this and the third. Got the little cake text messaging face on and everything like that. And as he's smiling and shooting a text to Heather, he comes around, and Sir is standing there with Trent's own weapon aimed at his chest. Now, I'm not going to say that Sir looked misplaced with... I'm not going to not say that Sir didn't look misplaced with this weapon. It was literally given like the French Revolution. Like, this was the most proper like gun holding I have ever seen in my life. And it has nothing to do with his stance or anything like that. Sir just gives off like... he don't do guns. Like, he's like, I have other means of torturing you. But also in this moment, I said, Sir, shoot him in the thigh and talk later. But... we didn't get that. I really wanted some torture here. But Sir started showing all of the different faces of these black kids that went missing. And one of those clippings was also intercepted in that letter. So Trent is like, what does he even got to do with me? And he's like, can you guess who was assigned to all these cases? Yes, Daddy Trent. He's not as revered as you think he is. And when everybody finds out that he swept these under the rug, your whole legacy and all of this shit that you think you got going on, it's gonna collapse, Sir. It's gonna collapse, and me and Gabrielle are gonna skip off into the sunset. You will no longer be in the way. Gabi couldn't wait on Trent to call her back. So she zooms and speeding through the streets, and right as she pulls up to the door for the second night in a row with, you know what I mean, the gun goes off. So there's that, guys. There's that. Season 2, episode 9 of Found Missing While Targeted. So I already kind of like sprinkled a little bit of stuff in there, but I wrote down some names of people and theories that I have that I want to discuss with y'all. And then y'all can leave comments in the comment box and tell me about it. So first thing, thoughts about Ethan. Goodbye. I'm sorry. Get a divorce. I'm over you. I'm over you big time. And other than the stuff that I even mentioned, this is one of the big things that I have with Ethan specifically. I don't know if y'all remember. Ethan met Dhan because he was his psychiatrist. You fell in love with your patient. So already your ethical and moral compasses already off. Okay. You then married a former patient. Okay. Again, cool. He told you the type of job that he had and what it entails. And you chose to quit practicing. He didn't tell you and he did not ask you. You chose that because you felt that it was the proper thing to do as a spouse. So your own internalized views of what you should and should not do within a marriage is your fault. Two people in a marriage can have their careers. It just takes communication. And sometimes within the communications, it might take y'all living apart in separate homes or separate states or something like that. But as long as you're constantly communicating your wants and your needs and checking in with your relationship and the state of it, it could work. But you had these ideals about being this doting husband, and I'm gonna be there for you, and I'm gonna be the stay-at-home, and we're gonna have a family, and we're gonna do all of these things. And when it did not happen in the time frame that you wanted it, you needed somebody to blame. But instead of blaming your husband, you blamed the person who is the founder and CEO of the job itself. What that got to do with your marriage? Not a damn thing. And that is my problem. So I already talked about what was in, like, when I was doing my recap, but this is like literally the umbrella to my issue with him. This whole thing with Dhan in the first place started on some unethical shit, and you sitting over here and you acting like it's Gabi's fault that y'all are now living in two separate households. And I'm over it. I'm over it. Next, Trent. Love between, this is how I feel about love as far as conditions and unconditional love. I believe that children love parents unconditionally. I think parents, whether they realize it or not, they love their children with conditions. Because you have your own ideals about who you want them to be. You're judging every choice and stuff that they have, and so it makes the kid feel like there are a million conditions. But I don't think there's anything wrong with conditional love, right? Same thing between partners. There are conditions. I will love you and I will be with you, but if you harm me emotionally, physically, mentally, financially, I'm out. Like, that's a condition, right? My issue with Trent is he has irrational conditions when it comes to Gabi. And he's so disconnected from reality as it pertains to victims. And he's so connected to just his dad and the black and white of it all when it comes to justice that he's not allowing room or grace to even love Gabi in her imperfections. How are you, a cop who has seen what you have seen, unable to grasp just even why she would kidnap Sir in the first place? You're not even asking the right questions because in your mind, you did something wrong, so I gotta open a case on you and I gotta do all these things and all this stuff. And if you don't give me your phone, and if you don't answer my questions, if you don't do this, but then you're yo-yoing her around with, Gabi, are you okay? Are you hurt? Oh my God, Gab. Like, you cannot have it both ways. Your lack of understanding and your lack of grace and your lack of empathy, like, I don't want Trent to be in game for Gabi at all. He does not deserve her, and he cannot handle the things that she comes with. Speaking of that, even going to Gabi, I don't even think Gabi loves him. I think it's the closest thing to love that she's felt. But the last time she loved someone, he kidnapped her. And she's not over that. She's not through the trauma of that. So while she feels, I kind of feel like she's feeling the loss of Trent and the comfort of Trent, I just don't think she loves him the way it sometimes thinks she's trying to make herself love him, if that makes sense. Like, she can't love him, not the way that he wants, and not in a way that she's capable of doing right now. And once she's able to get through this Sir thing, or even getting through some therapy, whether Sir is in the win or not, I think she'll realize that Trent should just I don't even think he should be a friend. He's not a friend that you can rely on. He should just be an acquaintance and just somebody that you used to know. Somebody, now you're just somebody that I used to know. Like I think that's what needs to happen with their relationship. Speaking of these relationships, Heather, let's talk about it. I want Heather to be Sir's sister, and I want her to also be his accomplice, and I want her to infiltrate Trent. And I want her to put Trent in a compromising position where Trent will finally make an unethical call to where he can actually put his feet in the shoes of a normal human being and realize that sometimes good people have to make immoral, irrational, and unethical choices. I just feel like he's just never had anything. He just lived such a life of privilege that there's nothing in him that can relate to Gabi or Dhan or anybody. And I need him caught up in something that exploits this part of him so that maybe, just maybe, he can start acting like he's not the most perfect human being on earth. Gabi's emotions in particular, I did want to circle back to her emotions. I think that as we go forward, again, Gabi letting go some of that guilt and actually going off on the people around her. In this episode, I think we're going to see more of her letting that guilt for herself go. And I'm hoping that we can see a more emotionally vulnerable Gabi, at least with her friends. Because even with Lacey being so close to her, when they were in the precinct and Lacey's like crying and pouring her heart out, Gabi is like not giving it back. She's just absorbing all of these feelings and just internalizing that everybody else's pain is my fault. And so when you think about the flashbacks, it's almost like she taught herself not to cry because everybody around her needs her all the time. The dad is going through it. Bella is going through it. Gina is going through it. Her own dad is going through it. And nobody's really checking in on her like that. But then also on the other side, she's not telling anyone at this point that she needs it. But I can see why she would do that. As a teenager, why should you have to tell the adults that after your kidnapping, you are not okay? They should be able to see through the walls that you're setting up or actively try to break them down. And they're just accepting it because it makes them uncomfortable. And so because the adults in her life are uncomfortable, she has to sit up here and console every single one of them. So when you've been doing that for 20 years, what can you actually give the people that you love? You're not used to that. And I can personally relate to that. I didn't cry at all when my friends would like emote or be like super upset and stuff like that, because me as a kid, I had to be the strong one for all of my siblings. I had to be the strong one for everybody else because they're hysterically crying and all this other stuff. And I never had time for that in front of people because I had to be the comfort. And the only times I ever cried, which I think I would cry like once a year, and I would watch something that I knew would make me cry so that I could just get it out. But I didn't really cry. Every time I felt it in my mind, I'm like, absolutely not. You better put them tears back in your fucking head and suck it up. And I did that for a long time, for decades. So I definitely understand. And so to see Gabi with the scotch and just kind of breaking down, like, we've seen them take shots. But like, my sis pulled the bottle from the bottom drawer, okay? The shit that's in the back. She was gonna get lit and emotional, and I hope that we continue to see this. And then speaking of emotions, Lacey still talking about how she's not ready to take over, even though we saw in this episode how she very easily directed everybody. And I would just say Bella's reacclimatization back into her own home life, Sir really did a number on Bella to where even now Lacey does not trust her own instincts. She does not trust her eyes. She does not trust her ears, and she does not trust her own emotions. And this was a learned behavior. One, from the fact that Sir was literally stalking her and in her room and she's seeing it. And then when her mom would come in and say, oh, well, it was a nightmare. And so her mom wasn't doing it on purpose. She never saw her in the room. But when you're telling her this, or sweetie, it's a dream, or it's all in your mind, she's now learning that maybe I am crazy and maybe I am seeing things. And I think just the way that that all unfortunately played out built in self-doubt for her entire life. So like I said earlier, it's not that she's incapable. She is in her own way because she's just had, her life was made to think that she was hallucinating something and that she couldn't believe what was in front of her. So I definitely feel really bad, and it also just highlights what kidnapping does to people, which is the heart of the show, right? Again, I already said all of them are victims of kidnapping in some way, shape, or form, whether it was their kids or whether it was them. And it just really shows like the psychology of it all, and just how hard it is to even allow people in your space when somebody violated it in that way. So to have Margaret in this episode coming back from the winter vacation, especially when there was so much conflict before then, I really enjoyed that one fleeting moment. It was fleeting as hell. That one fleeting moment in this episode where they all gathered, and it was like when we first met them, but better. And I said this in like episode 4 of this season. I said I really think that they can make it on the other side and they will be stronger for it. And so I'm hoping that as a unit, and with everything going on with Gabi, that they continue to strengthen that bond, continue to share things and not hold secrets. And yeah, I'm just, again, looking forward to the rest of the season. And so yeah, that's the show, man. Welcome back, Found. Welcome back. The outfits, the hair, the cinematography, the directing, the writing, everything A1. The music, it was so good. The jokes, heavy boots, everything, it was so good. I'm so happy to see them back on my TV screens. And that's gonna wrap up this episode, season 2, episode 9, Found Missing While Targeted. You can catch it every Thursday at 10/9 Central on NBC. If you don't have cable, it's cool. You can go ahead and catch it on Fridays on Peacock. And with that, as always, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave comments in the comment box below. If you like my outfit, let me know. If you have people in your life that don't watch it, but they like to listen to podcasts, share that link, baby girl. Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at So There's That Podcast. Again, I post so many different things on there, a lot of upcoming stuff to my stories on there as well that I don't talk about on the podcast because I don't have any commercials or anything on the podcast. So think of Instagram as like my commercial break, or like my advertising within the pod, if you will. And you can always find me live tweeting about either this show or any other show, or movies and recommendations and reviews on Twitter at Kivanshi, as well as Blue Sky at Kivanshi. And I will catch y'all in the next episode.